What if I told you that Sean Connery nearly became shark food while filming one of the most beloved Bond movies ever made? And that's just the beginning of the insane stories behind Thunderball. From explosions that shattered windows 30 miles away to a dead shark that came back to life, this film's production was more dangerous than any Mission 007 ever faced. Before we dive into these mind-blowing secrets, make sure to hit that subscribe button because you're about to discover things about Thunderball that will change how you watch James Bond forever. Number 20. The jetpack pilot who saved Sean Connery's image. The iconic jetpack sequence that opens Thunderball almost looked completely different. The real pilot, Bill Sutter, was asked to fly without a helmet to make Bond look cooler on camera. But Sutter flat out refused, knowing the dangers involved. His safety-first attitude is why we see Connery wearing that distinctive helmet, and honestly, it probably saved the scene from looking ridiculous. This wasn't just some prop either. The Bell Textron jetpack was real military technology developed in the 1950s to help soldiers jump over battlefield obstacles. The only problem? It could only fly for 21 seconds, which meant they had exactly one shot to get this scene right. Two qualified pilots were flown all the way to France just to operate this thing, proving how serious the filmmakers were about making Bond's escape look authentic. But the real danger on set was still waiting underwater. Number 19. A Breitling watch worth more than most houses. Remember Q's gadget watch that could detect radiation? That actual Breitling top time disappeared during filming and vanished for nearly 50 years. Then in 2013, someone found it at a car boot sale for just £25. After authentication, Christie's auction house sold it for over £100,000. Imagine finding a prop worth more than most people's homes sitting in someone's garage sale. The watch was a 1962 Breitling Top Time reference 2002, and it took multiple experts to verify its authenticity. The person who bought it for pocket change at that car boot sale probably had no idea they were holding a piece of cinema history. It makes you wonder how many other priceless movie props are sitting forgotten in attics and garage sales around the world. Speaking of things that disappeared and came back unexpectedly, number 18. The most expensive explosion in cinema history. When they needed to blow up Largo's yacht, special effects coordinator John Steers got help from a U.S. Air Force lieutenant colonel who supplied experimental rocket fuel. Problem was, Steers had no idea how powerful this stuff really was. The resulting explosion was so massive, it launched the yacht into the air and shattered windows along Bay Street in Nassau. The crew was filming 30 miles away from the city when this happened. The Disco Volante yacht had been bought by production designer Ken Adam for around $10,000 and completely refitted in Miami. Naval advisors told him the boat's functions as described in the script were impossible, especially the idea of converting it from a yacht into a hydrofoil. But Adam designed it anyway, using just 2-inch slip bolts to attach the catamaran section. When that experimental rocket fuel went off, it created one of the most spectacular explosions ever captured on film. But explosions weren't the only thing that nearly went catastrophically wrong. Number 17. Sean Connery's first time in the gun barrel. Here's something that'll shock longtime Bond fans. Thunderball was the first time Sean Connery actually performed the iconic gun barrel sequence himself. In the previous 3 films, his stunt double Bob Simmons had been the one walking across the screen and turning to shoot. By the time Thunderball rolled around, the Bond franchise had become such a massive phenomenon that the producers decided the real 007 needed to be in this signature moment. It's wild to think that one of the most recognizable opening sequences in cinema history didn't actually feature the main actor for the first 3 films. This change marked Thunderball as a turning point, where everything about Bond production got bigger, more expensive, and more attention to detail. And speaking of attention to detail that nearly went horribly wrong, number 16. The stuntman who demanded shark insurance. When Emilio Largo throws his unlucky subordinate into the shark pool, stuntman Bill Cummings demanded $250 in hazard pay before he'd jump onto a live shark. Considering this was the 1960s, that was serious money for what was essentially a death wish disguised as a stunt. Cummings wasn't being dramatic either. He was literally leaping into a pool filled with live sharks with nothing but his wits and some basic safety protocols. The fact that he survived this stunt is remarkable enough, but what happened next during the shark scenes would prove that his concerns about safety were completely justified. Even the most experienced professionals knew they were playing with fire, or in this case, razor-sharp teeth. But the real shark nightmare was just beginning. Number 15. The plexiglass partition that nearly failed Sean Connery. Sean Connery was understandably nervous about swimming with live sharks, so production designer Ken Adam created a plexiglass partition to separate him from the predators. There was just one problem. Adam ran out of material and unknowingly left a 4-foot gap in the barrier. A shark found that gap and exploited it, forcing Connery to make a frantic escape from the pool while the cameras were rolling. His genuine terror in those underwater scenes isn't acting, it's pure survival instinct kicking in. The fact that this near-death experience actually improved the authenticity of the scene is both incredible and terrifying. Adam later admitted he had no idea about the gap until after filming, meaning Connery was swimming in mortal danger without anyone knowing. And then there was the incident that made everyone question if they'd gone too far. Number 14. The dead shark that came back to life. For a shot requiring a shark to lunge at Bond as he exits the pool, the crew used what they thought was a dead shark pulled by wires. Special effects coordinator John Steers bravely entered the pool surrounded by live sharks to control the supposedly deceased predator. That's when the dead shark suddenly revived, triggering an absolute feeding frenzy in the pool. As Steers screamed for help, director Terrence Young famously shouted, "Turn the cameras," to capture the chaos. Somehow Steers survived this nightmare scenario, and the footage they got was so incredible that he later won an Oscar for visual effects. It's insane to think that one of the most awarded sequences in the film came from what was essentially a life-or-death accident. But sharks weren't the only animals causing problems on set. Number 13. The motorcycle stunt that nearly killed Bob Simmons. When Fiona Volpe fires rockets from her motorcycle to destroy a car, stuntman Bob Simmons was responsible for driving the vehicle and leaping out before the explosion. Director Terrence Young was so concerned for Simmons' safety that when he didn't immediately see him jump clear, he thought they'd just witnessed a man die on camera. Young and the entire crew rushed over to the burning wreckage expecting the worst possible outcome. That's when Simmons popped up behind them like nothing had happened. He jumped clear at the very last possible second, timing it perfectly to avoid the blast. The relief on set must have been incredible, but it shows just how dangerous these practical effects really were. There were no computer graphics to fall back on, just real explosions and split-second timing. Yet somehow, the most dangerous moments were still happening underwater. Number 12. The underwater sleds that shouldn't have worked. Production designer Ken Adam designed those futuristic underwater sleds used by Spectre, but he wasn't even sure they could be built to actually function. The concept seemed impossible until they discovered Jordan Klein, an expert on mini-submarines in Florida, who somehow made Adam's wild designs into working underwater vehicles. These weren't just props being pushed around by divers off camera. They were fully functional underwater craft that the actors actually rode during filming. The engineering feat required to make these things work was incredible, especially considering the technology available in the 1960s. Klein essentially created real-life Bond gadgets that worked exactly as the script demanded. Producer Kevin McClory was so impressed he bought one of the main Spectre mini-submarines and put it in his Bahamas villa garden, where it sat for years until the property was sold and bulldozed in the 90s. Number 11. The $1 million prop that got bulldozed. When Kevin McClory became wealthy from his share of Thunderball's profits, he purchased a villa in the Bahamas and placed the main Spectre mini-submarine in his garden as a conversation piece. For years, this incredible piece of cinema history sat there as lawn decoration. When McClory eventually sold the property in the 1990s, the new owners decided to demolish everything to make way for a holiday resort. That priceless submarine, which would be worth millions to collectors today, was destroyed along with the rest of the villa. It's heartbreaking to think that one of the most iconic vehicles in Bond history ended up in a landfill because nobody realized its value. The loss of props wasn't the only behind-the-scenes drama plaguing the production. Number 10. The legal battle that almost killed Thunderball. In 1959, Ian Fleming teamed up with producer Kevin McClory and writer Jack Whittingham to develop a Bond screenplay. When Fleming got disillusioned with Hollywood, he returned to Jamaica and wrote Thunderball as a novel, incorporating elements from their collaboration. McClory sued, and the legal mess that followed almost prevented the movie from ever being made. McClory won the film rights to Thunderball and tried to compete directly with Eon Productions by making his own Bond movie. Since he couldn't cast Sean Connery due to Eon's exclusive contract, he considered Lawrence Harvey for the role. In response, producers Broccoli and Saltzman fast-tracked On Her Majesty's Secret Service to beat McClory to theaters. The legal and business maneuvering was so complex it makes modern Hollywood disputes look simple. Eventually, McClory agreed to co-produce with Eon, but the drama was far from over. Number 9. The director who almost didn't direct. Guy Hamilton was the original choice to direct Thunderball fresh off his success with Goldfinger, but he felt completely drained and lacked the energy for another Bond film. The producers then turned to Terrence Young, who had directed Dr. No and From Russia with Love, making Thunderball his third and final Bond film. Hamilton's decision to step away from Thunderball turned out to be temporary. He later returned to direct Sean Connery one more time in Diamonds Are Forever and helmed Roger Moore's first two Bond outings. But imagine how different Thunderball might have been with Hamilton's more playful style instead of Young's grittier approach. Young's experience with the underwater sequences and dangerous stunts probably made him the right choice for this particular film. The casting decisions were just as dramatic. Number 8. The leading lady who couldn't speak. Julie Christie, Raquel Welch, and Faye Dunaway were all considered for Domino, but the role went to Claudine Auger. When Auger was cast, the character was changed from Italian Dominetta Vitali to French Dominique Derval to match her accent. Then producers decided her voice wasn't suitable and had her completely dubbed in post-production. Nikki van der Zyl, who had dubbed voices in the previous 3 Bond films, provided Domino's English dialogue, so audiences never actually heard Auger's real voice in the finished film. It's ironic that one of the most important characters in Thunderball was essentially performed by 2 different women, one for the physical performance and another for the voice. The attention to visual details was just as meticulous. Number 7. The costume design secret hidden in plain sight. The costume designers made a brilliant subtle choice that most viewers never notice. Domino is dressed exclusively in black and white outfits throughout the entire film. This wasn't coincidence or budget constraints, it was a deliberate visual reference to her name, which means Dominoes in several languages. This kind of attention to detail shows how much thought went into every aspect of Thunderball's production. Even something as simple as wardrobe choices carried deeper meaning and added layers to the character development. It's the kind of sophisticated storytelling that modern blockbusters often overlook in favor of flashier effects, but the most sophisticated element was also the most deceptive. Number 6. The breathing device that fooled military engineers. Early in the film, Q equips Bond with a tiny breathing apparatus that lets him survive underwater for several minutes. The scene was so convincing that a member of the Royal Engineers actually called the film's chief draftsman Peter Lamont to ask how long the device really worked. Lamont's response was brutally honest: "As long as you can hold your breath." When the engineer pointed out that Bond was underwater for several minutes on screen, Lamont explained it was simply skilled editing that created the illusion. This perfectly captures the movie magic of practical effects. Sometimes the most impressive gadgets are just clever camera work and post-production. The Royal Engineers weren't the only ones fooled either. Audiences worldwide believed this tiny rebreather was real technology. Number 5. The theme song rejected by Johnny Cash. The Journey to Thunderball's theme song was a complete disaster that almost derailed the entire opening sequence. Composers John Barry and Leslie Bricusse initially struggled to incorporate Thunderball, a military term for atomic mushroom clouds, into a song. They wrote Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang instead, inspired by an Italian journalist's description of James Bond. Shirley Bassey recorded this track, but when it proved too short for the title sequence, Dionne Warwick was brought in for an extended version. Producer Cubby Broccoli insisted the song must include the film's actual title, leading to multiple rejections, including a submission from Johnny Cash himself. Barry and lyricist Don Black finally crafted the Tom Jones version we know today, but imagine how different the film would have felt with Cash's deep voice opening the movie. Number 4. The budget that broke all records. The first 2 Bond films had modest international success and tiny budgets, but after Goldfinger's massive triumph, Thunderball's budget skyrocketed to around $9 million, more than the first 3 films combined. This wasn't just Hollywood excess, it was a calculated gamble that paid off spectacularly. Number 3. The box office numbers that made history. Thunderball earned over $140 million worldwide, and when adjusted for inflation, it remains the second most financially successful Bond film after Skyfall. The underwater sequences, dangerous stunts, and massive explosions weren't just artistic choices, they were smart business investments that created a template for blockbuster filmmaking. Number 2. The continuity error that reveals production chaos. When Q gives Bond his gadgets, he explains the watch is a Geiger counter and the camera takes 8 pictures underwater. But later, Bond tells Domino the camera is actually the Geiger counter. This wasn't sloppy editing, it reveals how chaotic the production really was, with script changes happening so fast that dialogue couldn't keep up. The mix-up shows just how frantic things got during Thunderball's production. With multiple screenwriters, constant rewrites, and the pressure of following Goldfinger's massive success, details like gadget functionality were getting lost in translation. You can actually hear the clicking of the device when Domino drops it on the boat, proving the prop department was just as confused as the script supervisors. It's amazing that such a polished film came together despite this behind-the-scenes chaos, but it also shows that even the most successful movies aren't immune to basic human error. Number 1. The announcement that never happened. The end credits were supposed to announce James Bond will return in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, following Ian Fleming's original Blofeld trilogy. But when Swiss snow levels weren't suitable for filming the 1963 novel, they jumped ahead to You Only Live Twice instead. Rather than reshoot the ending, supervising editor Peter Hunt simply trimmed the next film announcement from the credits, leaving them unusually abrupt. This last-minute change completely altered the Bond timeline and left audiences wondering what happened to the promised sequel. This decision had massive consequences for the entire Bond franchise. Fleming's Blofeld trilogy was meant to be told in chronological order: Thunderball, then On Her Majesty's Secret Service, then You Only Live Twice. By jumping ahead to You Only Live Twice, they completely disrupted the emotional arc of Bond's relationship with Blofeld and Tracy. When On Her Majesty's Secret Service finally got made in 1969, audiences were confused about the timeline and character connections. The abrupt ending of Thunderball's credits became a perfect metaphor for how weather conditions in Switzerland accidentally rewrote James Bond history forever. And there you have it, 20 shocking secrets from Thunderball that prove the real drama happened behind the cameras. From near-death experiences with sharks to million-dollar props ending up in landfills, this film's production was more dangerous and chaotic than any Spectre plot. Which fact shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible movie secrets that Hollywood doesn't want you to know.